The WNBA will officially have 15 franchises as of April 3rd, 2026. The Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire will make their first selections and begin to build their rosters. Portland and Toronto will flip a coin to decide who picks first. The winner of the coin toss can get either the first pick in the expansion draft or the 6th pick in the collegiate draft. Existing teams can protect up to 5 players from their entire roster. Any players listed as active, suspended, reserved, cored, retired, and potential unrestricted free agents. Because importantly, Toronto and Portland can offer the Supermax to an unrestricted free agent, just one, like the last draft. So the Aces will protect A'ja Wilson to keep the rights to offer her that Supermax salary. With a majority of the league being free agents, it changes how strategic the existing teams have to be protecting their players. Every free agent will want to see how close they can get to a max salary during free agency. Now, different than the last draft, even players that can't be cored can be selected. The expansion teams will select from unprotected, unrestricted free agents, players on rookie level deals who aren't protected, and reserve players that are overseas or just away from the league at the moment. All rookie scale salaries are going to be matched to this new deal, so their pay will be adjusted to match this new salary scale. Each existing team could potentially lose 2 players, but these rules will make sure the teams stay honest. They won't be able to hide or hoard too many star players, while the expansion teams won't be able to load up on too many star veterans at once. So let's see how this looks from the team side, specifically considering free agency, and what would be left for Toronto and Portland to choose from in their expansion draft. The only thing we won't know unless it's leaked is if a player is telling their team not to protect them, knowing they'll get a bigger bag from the new team. Case in point, Jewel Lloyd. So let's start with the Aces. Obviously, you supermax A'ja Wilson, max out Jackie Young. You may run into a little bit with Chelsea Gray because she could definitely get a hefty deal on the market. A supermax, I don't know, but definitely a max contract. So that would leave Lloyd on the outs. She could get a supermax elsewhere, most definitely. The Aces would limit themselves and Jewel by protecting her. This is probably the player I have my eyes on the most. I know she's had some rough years, but if you're one of these new expansion teams and you can pick her up and build around her over the next few years, starting from scratch, that's definitely something you go for. And I think Jewel will be down for it too. For every other player, it really makes no sense to protect them or select them. If you really want the player, make an offer in free agency or look through the best options that are still available towards the middle and the end of free agency. And that's how most of the teams will end up. So for the Aces, I have Nye and Lloyd, both valuable for different reasons. So we'll just see if the teams pick either one of them up. Alright, let's talk about those Golden State Valkyries, who ended up surprising most in their first year in the league. Now, their current active roster is going to include Kate Martin and Carla Late, so let's definitely protect them. Then they have restricted free agents in Veronica Burton and Cecilia Zandalicini. Valkyries get interesting when you look at their reserve players, which is still having the rights to said player, but they may be playing overseas or out of the league currently, but they are out of contract. The player can only negotiate with the team that has their rights unless waived. And the Valkyries have 2 reserve contracts that would be pretty lucrative on the market. That's Janelle Salon and Elania Rupert. If either one of them doesn't make that protected list, I could definitely see them going in the expansion draft. Now, everyone else on the Valkyries are free agents. No one is looking at a supermax deal, so even if they want to stay with the Valkyries, it'll be negotiation time during free agency. Now, they did get more from Salon throughout the season, so depending on where they want to go with their roster, I can see it going either way. I'll put up Rupert as a reserved contract. I don't see Portland or Toronto wanting anyone else on this list outside of free agency, but of course they could grab any of these unprotected reserve contracts as well just to beef up their roster. Alright, looking at the Connecticut Sun, I have them protecting Marina Maybury, Anissa Morrow, Aaliyah Edwards, Sanaya Rivers, and Lakin. They have said they want to build around Marina, so she'll probably get that max contract depending on conversations with the team. She's not a super max player, but she could get it, even if it's not from the Sun. And again, not in this expansion draft, but in free agency. Now, the Sun have some interesting restricted free agents in Olivia Nelson-Ododa and Haley Peters. So once you get to looking at what's available for the Connecticut Sun, it's going to depend on the team and what they deem more valuable, an active rookie contract or an experienced restricted free agent that you'll still have rights to in free agency, but you have to beat out any offers they receive to keep them. So for the Connecticut Sun, I got Nelson-Ododa, restricted free agent, and Marshall on an active rookie contract. So if either team deems that valuable, that's what they'll pick up. Okay, now what about those Chicago Sky? Obviously, we're going to protect Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso, Haley Van Lith, Maddie Westbeld, and Uzan. It's no reason to protect anybody else. Everybody else on the team are unrestricted free agents. There's no one you want to protect from a max or super max contract. So while Chicago may go after some of their own players in free agency, I don't see either expansion team selecting a player from the Chicago Sky. The Chicago Sky will get a pass from me. All right, the Atlanta Dream. A little bit of a more interesting team when you look through their entire roster. You obviously want to protect Alicia Gray outside of Ryan Howard. That's the core of this team, offering her the max. And again, depending on her market and the conversations they're having behind closed doors, is there a team that would offer her the super max? Would the Dream end up limiting her bag by protecting her? They'll obviously want to protect Ryan Howard, just having her rights again going in free agency. Probably also for Naz Hillman, and then protecting your active players, Tahina Powell, Taylor Theory. Now, Atlanta could surprise us and protect someone like Jordan Canada, just attempting to keep her. But unless they're going to max her out, she's still someone they're going to have to negotiate with in free agency. I can see a pick from this team going to one of their reserve contracts in Maya Caldwell or Sika Kone. I can see those teams either picking up these reserve contracts or passing completely on the Dream. One extreme or the other. But everyone else are unrestricted free agents. Again, so unless the Dream are protecting them from Supermax contracts, which none of these players are really on that tier. So whether they're negotiating with the Dream or any other team in the league, they're just going to be going out and trying to get the best contract they can. All right, taking a look at the Wings. Now, they actually have the most options when you're looking at this from the Toronto or Portland side of things. They have a handful of reserve contracts, a handful of active rosters, and really only 3 free agents. If they don't protect Arike Gumbawale, you can swoop in and offer her the Supermax. They are most definitely having these conversations behind closed doors, specifically Arike Gumbawale and the Dallas Wings. If they're not on the same page, then she's not going to be protected and one of these teams will swoop in. If she is protected, then the Dallas Wings are pretty much promising her a Supermax contract. And then you obviously protect Paige Beckers, JJ Quinterly, Isaiah James, Maddie Segrist, active players you want to keep on the squad. And even then, you're only going to lose 1 or 2 of them. So if they're really not worried about it, they could protect a Lee Yarou, a Haley Jones, but Dallas will lose 2 players unless they made some backroom deal to not have a player picked up. They just have too many options to pass on. All right, taking a look at the Indiana Fever. Obviously want to protect your Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull. That last slot is probably a toss-up between Chloe Bibby and Michaela Timpson, just whoever they deem more valuable. And whoever doesn't make it will probably be picked up in the expansion draft. They have some pretty decent free agents. They'll probably want to figure out how to hold on to Cunningham, but unless that's someone they're promising a big contract to, she'll see what they have to offer her in free agency. I'm interested to see where someone like Odyssey Sims ends up. So whoever the Indiana Fever leave in that space, again, either Chloe Bibby or Timpson, that's who I see getting picked up in the expansion draft. The Sparks actually ended up being another team with a few options. With the way their team is built, they definitely want to keep a hold of Cameron Brink, Kelsey Plum, Rakia Jackson, and I would say Ray Burrell, just how she changes the dynamic of their team. I can see them changing out Dearica Hamby and Azare Stevens. That's perfectly fine, but I don't see either pulling a Supermax contract, so the protection is just to keep the rights there. Now for the expansion draft, that still leaves you active contracts, reserve contracts, and even a restricted free agent. So I can see this team losing one of their active rookie contracts and one of their reserve contracts. Whoever they have in this slot, I can see going in the expansion draft. I mean, even looking at their restricted free agent, Julie Almond could definitely be picked up and be a key piece on a new team, just how we saw with the Valkyries. Then we get into the Minnesota Lynx. You would actually think it would be a lot of tough decisions here, but again, because everyone's pretty much going to test what they're worth on the market, you just have to protect your biggest stars, Nafisa Collier, Kayla McBride, depending on the conversation they're having, your active roster, which is just 2 players, and whichever reserve contract they deem the most valuable. While this team's decisions are all internal, especially because even the outer pieces of their core are all in free agency, Portland and Toronto may only see some value here in a reserve contract. And with none of these names really jumping off the page, you could see a pass for the Lynx. Alright, looking at the Phoenix Mercury, we're going to protect Satu Sabally, Kalia Copper, Alyssa Thomas, Kehlani Brown, and Natasha Mack. Pretty easy and right to the point there. Kehlani Brown has a pretty valuable contract, being one of the only active contracts that's not a rookie contract. I think it's her and only Lexi Brown. And then out of your reserves, Natasha Mack is pretty valuable, just having those rights going into free agency. They did get a lot of production from Akoa Makani, so that could be switched out. I wouldn't mind being wrong there, but their core is more than likely going to be protected. And while I personally don't think they would get a super max, they could each get a max deal, and that could be how the Mercury build their team. And it's possible they'll lose DeWanna Bonner and Westbeld in free agency. But I think this team is pretty cut and dry, so even when you get to the expansion draft, Portland and Toronto, they'll probably just pick up one of the reserve contracts. If they don't pick up a reserve contract, then this team will get a pass. Now, the Storm are interesting because between their big 3, this is another team that's having these conversations already. So unless you're going to offer these ladies the max, do not protect them. You got Nneka Ogwumike, Skylar Diggins, and Gabby Williams. And then on your active roster, you definitely want to protect Dominique Malonga and Lexi Brown, again with one of those valuable contracts right now. You do put up Horston and Maul, just kind of seeing what happens there. Nika's just been having some injury trouble, so you just see what they pick up. Now, this could get interesting in the reserve contracts because you do have Erica Wheeler down there, Samuelson, who they could pick up, but just like every other team, they will be adding different new pieces in free agency, especially negotiating with somebody like Brittany Sykes. So I could see the Storm losing one or both of Hull and Horston, one of their rookie contracts and one of their reserve contracts. It's just going to depend on what they deem valuable at that point in the draft. And then we get to the Washington Mystics, who really kind of came from behind with all these changes. Free agency is going to help them as a team. This expansion draft will help them kind of thin the herd and figure out where they want to go. Definitely protect your star rookies there. Sonia Citron, Kiki Irfin. I think they also protect Shug Sutton and Sakira Austin. Now that last slot will be interesting if they keep Stephanie Dolson, which will be basically saying they'll max her. If they leave her to the expansion draft, I can see her getting picked up. At the same time, if she doesn't make it, I can see one of their active roster players get in that slot. More than likely Georgia Amore. But whichever one is left to the expansion draft, you can guarantee that's who's getting picked up. They're not passing on the available players here from the Mystics. Alright, and on to the New York Liberty. Now, as New York, you want to protect Ionescu and Stewart, and depending on those inside conversations, probably want to keep Jones. Now, Sabally and Phoebus can round out that protected 5, but I could see that swapped out with Johannes. They don't have too many reserve players to really make it a thing, which makes New York pretty interesting. If Johannes is left available for Portland or Toronto, that's a pretty meaningful pickup. At the same time, if they leave Jones available, that's a franchise starter. If they leave Sabally or Phoebus available, that's an excellent pickup for an expansion team. So New York is pretty important because that 6th man out will be picked up by an expansion team. No doubt about it. So I do have Marine in the spot, but like I said, I could just as easily see this being Jonquel Jones, which overall would mean one team would get Jewel Lloyd and the other would get Jonquel Jones. And this is pretty much what you end up with, roughly. Obviously, you have some mix and matches here, but for the most part, Toronto and Portland are looking at reserve and rookie contracts to pick up. So I can see them passing on a number of teams. It really only gets interesting when you look at the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty, and in the case of some key role players, the Golden State Valkyries. But overall, every single team is going into free agency with a handful of active players. So it'll be interesting to see, just like the Golden State Valkyries expansion draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of passing and both teams come out of this draft with maybe 5 or 6 players on their roster.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, players.